My dear friends, today is the day when we celebrate the Church being born. It's our birthday. Now, I was recently brought up short by something connected with birthdays. I came across a comment that during this pandemic, we're starting to look differently at things that we once considered perfectly normal, admirable even. And the example given was of blowing onto food before sharing it. I thought, what? And then realised the reference to the ritual of blowing out the candles on a birthday cake before sharing the cake with everyone present. For me, what this virus has really brought home is the way in which we cannot be separated from each other. That is true on so many levels, but today I want to talk about our breathing. We breathe each other's air. If we spend enough time in each other's company, then what is in my lungs will end up in yours, and what is in yours will end up in mine. Our breath, the contents of our breath, will spread. We're not isolated atoms. We are instead a single organism, a single community. We're parts of one body, and we breathe into each other. Keep this in mind as we consider today's Gospel lesson. Jesus gives the disciples the Holy Spirit, and he does it by breathing on them. That which was in Jesus is now in them. The disciples are now apostles. That is, instead of primarily being in a mode of receiving from Jesus, they're now to be in a mode of sharing what they've received. They've become infected with the gospel, and their task is to share the contagion, breathing it out in turn. And what is the hallmark of this gospel which Jesus breathes into them? It's forgiveness. It's amazing grace. In our recent readings from earlier in John's Gospel, Jesus prays to the Father that his disciples would be protected from the world, a world which would end up hating them. The world doesn't recognize forgiveness. It sees it only as weakness. In other words, it doesn't breathe it in. Perhaps that's a good way to recognize the world. It doesn't recognize the value of such breathing. Consequently, the world suffers, and it inflicts suffering in turn. The breath of the world is a breath that has no mercy. Which puts me in mind of something else we've seen recently. The world and the church might be seen like a policeman leaning down with his knee on a neck and refusing to hear the words, "I can't breathe." What we see is that the policeman hasn't breathed the gospel of forgiveness, and suffering is what follows. This, I think, is what Jesus is describing when he talks about sins being kept. If the breath of grace is rejected, then condemnation is the consequence. This is how the wheat and the chaff are separated. Today, Jesus blows on our food, breathing his life into us, and we are born again. Breathe on me, breath of God. Fill me with life anew, that I may love what thou dost love, and do what thou wouldst do. May we inhale the gospel of forgiveness, and exhale the grace of the Holy Spirit, now and always. Until we meet again.